Hey guys, tonight we wander deep into the administrative underbelly of the ancient world. So buckle up because we're heading straight into the mythological bureaucracy that makes modern DMV visits feel like spa days. Picture this, you're newly dead in ancient Greece. The underworld yawns open like a damp subway tunnel. The air smells faintly of forgotten olives and ancient sandals. You shuffle forward in a line that never ends, clutching a crumpled scroll that no one explained. There's a drachma coin under your tongue, placed by someone who thought they were helping. You're not sure if it's for a toll or a vending machine. You probably won't survive this, emotionally. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You inch forward toward the river Styx, which honestly looks like your high school's flooded parking lot. Charon the boatman eyes you with disapproval. He's wearing a threadbare cloak and flip-flops, and he mutters about union hours. You fumble the coin into his palm, which he counts twice before nodding. The ferry ride is slow, the water oily and reflective, and Charon hums tunelessly the whole way. You're pretty sure it's an ancient version of Wonderwall. Once you dock, the real fun begins. A massive building looms, the House of Eternal Registration. Picture a marble post office the size of a football stadium, manned entirely by retired philosophers and mildly disapproving demigods. You take a number. It's a seashell with 843,207 etched in cuneiform. You wait. Cerberus the three-headed dog is lounging by the entrance, reading 3 newspapers at once. One head yawns loudly, another burps, and the third gives you a once-over. He's not growling. Yet. He's more like middle management now, assigned to hallway security and lunchroom disputes. You sidle past. Inside, the queue moves slower than a Homeric simile. You pass dozens of weary souls filling out multi-page scrolls labelled Declaration of Mortal Status form and Afterlife Allocation Preferences, scroll B12. A scribe corrects someone's spelling of valor. Quills squeak against parchment. Ink pots run dry. Someone sneezes and is immediately fined for excess spectral disturbance. Eventually you approach a stone desk where King Minos himself awaits, the most overqualified receptionist in history. A former king of Crete, part-time judge of the dead, full-time paperwork czar. His beard is pointy. His eyebrows say, "I've seen things." He waves you forward without looking up. "Name?" he drones. You say it. He doesn't react. He dips a bronze stylus into ink and begins scribbling on a slate. "Cause of death?" he asks. You hesitate. Do you say cursed olive pit or tragic goat incident? He doesn't care either way. He just makes a tally mark in a column labelled ironic. "Heroic deeds," he mutters. You squint. "You once held a door for a cyclops. Does that count?" "None," he notes, unimpressed. Next, you're shuffled down a hallway filled with frescoes of people waiting. There's a pit stop for purgatorial orientation, where you watch a puppet show on how to behave in Hades. One of the puppets is clearly just a sock. The other is a fig with googly eyes. Somewhere down the hall, there's a loud argument over soul quotas. 2 shades in togas are debating whether a warrior counts as a civilian if he tripped on his own spear. Historians still argue whether battlefield mishaps void Elysium eligibility. One insists. You inch past. A minor deity waves you into the final chamber, realm assignment logistics. This is where your fate is categorized. It's not dramatic. It's just a big marble spreadsheet with squeaky gears and a disgruntled oracle tapping a crystal ball like it's a frozen iPad. "You're headed to the plane of Asphodel," she announces flatly. "Congratulations, you're average." The plane of Asphodel, where souls wander forever in neutral grayscale. No feasts, no torments, just a sort of eternal meh. The IKEA showroom of eternity. You get a pamphlet. There's a map with exactly one labelled location. Bench. Someone tries to complain, but a stern attendant points to a warning. All placement decisions are final. Appeals require 2 mortal witnesses, 1 ghost parrot and a notary muse. On your way out, you pass the records room, a cavern filled with scrolls sorted by emotion, date, and number of battle scars. You overhear a clerk muttering, "Why do mortals always die during festivals?" while flipping through a dusty tome called Tragic Timing, Vol de Tefine. Eventually, you are issued a robe, itchy, and sandals, both left-footed, and given a room in the dormitories of slight regret. Your roommate is a minor Spartan who insists on flexing every time he speaks. The walls are beige, eternally beige. And yet, as you lie down on your stone slab, the hum of bureaucracy fades into something almost soothing. The rhythmic scribble of quills, the faint groan of iron hinges, and the muttered complaints of underworld accountants all lull you towards sleep. You start to wonder if maybe this whole thing, this massive, pointless operation, is kind of peaceful. It's oddly comforting to know that even in death, someone is keeping track of your favourite bread, your least noble injury, and your spiritual category number. Tomorrow, you might ask Cerberus where he gets his newspapers. Tonight, you just listen to the slow shuffle of eternity's filing cabinets. You wake up, or whatever the underworld equivalent of that is, to the sound of Olympus holding a board meeting. Not that you're on Olympus, but their debates echo all the way down. The acoustics of divine bureaucracy are just that inefficient. The sky trembles slightly every time Zeus slams his lightning bolt like a gavel. Turns out the gods run everything via committee. You had visions of thunderbolts, passionate arguments, epic proclamations. Nope. Most days it's just quarterly reviews and strongly worded scrolls. Olympus is less pantheon of glory and more eternally mismanaged HOA. Zeus presides at the head of a grand obsidian table. He's in business casual thunderwear, toga slightly singed, laurel crown slightly askew. His beard has notes in it. Literally. Notes. Apollo tried to sneak in a request for upgraded harp strings last meeting, and Zeus used his beard as a filing cabinet. Aphrodite thinks it's unhygienic, but she lost that motion 3-2. This morning's agenda? Cloud allocation procedures and thunderbolt usage oversight. Riveting. You sit invisibly in a corner. Turns out the dead can spectate as long as you don't snack too loudly. Hermes zips in with coffee for the Pantheon. His winged sandals are fraying. He looks exhausted. 1 cloud macchiato for Demeter, 2 thundershot espressos for Ares. Someone please tell Dionysus to stop adding wine to the water cooler. The meeting begins with Zeus clearing his throat for 9 minutes. That's how he asserts dominance. First order of business, he intones. Zephyrus has been reallocating spring breezes without authorization. Again, everyone groans. Zephyrus is the seasonal intern who means well but causes floral tornadoes in February. Poseidon scribbles something under internal weather misconduct. As the debate spirals, you begin to notice the real power here lies with the scribe nymphs, mystical stenographers who capture every word and file it away in obsidian cabinets the size of cruise ships. Their handwriting is impossibly small. One of them invented fine-tipped quills by whittling Pegasus hairs with a phoenix talon. True story. Probably. Meanwhile, Hera requests clarification on the new mortal marriage morality clause, which she wrote herself and refuses to explain. Ambiguity invites compliance, she says, sipping from a gold mug that reads World's #1 Matriarch. Don't question it. Apollo tries to bring up music festival permits on the mortal plane, arguing that lyre duels need regulation. Dionysus interrupts with a wine-based slideshow about toga redesigns. He's been lobbying to add sequins. Historians still argue whether his fashion reforms were divine satire or just a very, very long hangover. Back in the corner, Athena adjusts her helmet, scowls at the room and mutters, "We could have invented democracy properly, but no, we invented musical charades." She submits a motion to review all war declarations from the last century due to overzealous hero submissions. Every now and then, the committee pauses for divine correspondence hour, during which scrolls are reviewed from mortals praying for things like rain, revenge, or better abs. Ares reads one aloud. "Dear Ares, please smite Greg. He knows why." There's a moment of silence, then a collective nod. Greg's fate is sealed. And yes, they use scrolls, not because they're traditional, but because every time Hephaestus suggested divine tablets, the cloud storage got hacked by satyrs. Now everything's written, logged, and stored in temperature-controlled moon vaults. Occasionally you hear a booming voice from beyond, a glitch in the divine bureaucracy. That's Chaos, the primordial entity who refuses to attend meetings, but randomly appears in agenda footnotes. Last month, Chaos made the minutes of the meeting document 37 hours long by just scribbling honk in 12 languages across the margins. You start to realize something strange. Nothing is ever actually decided. Motions are proposed, seconded, debated, tabled, amended, ritual danced around, and then referred to the next session. Forever. It's an eternal loop of indecision, possibly designed by Sisyphus himself during his sabbatical. Even divine punishments go through committee. Remember Prometheus? The whole liver-eating eagle thing? Yeah, that was a 5-4 vote. Aphrodite abstained, citing empathy fatigue. Hermes was late and accidentally voted for both sides. It's unclear whether Prometheus even knows he's part of a pilot program for mythological consequence review. Outside the meeting hall, the gods' personal assistants huddle in stressed-out clusters. Minor spirits like Nike, goddess of victory, not the shoes, frantically organize victory receipts. One dryad sobs into a pile of unsigned flower orders. A satyr from HR tries to coach Medusa through her conflict resolution seminar. There's even a divine union recently formed to protest the never-ending overtime. Their slogan? Eternity doesn't mean free labor. They've scheduled a celestial strike, but it keeps getting postponed due to mountain realignment meetings. Despite it all, the paperwork moves, slowly, surely, like divine molasses. You watch a Thunderbolt requisition form make its way through 8 departments, get declined for insufficient ZAP justification, resubmitted with a frowny face, then finally approved with a Zeus-side note. Use wisely, no birthday pranks. Somewhere deep in the archives, a lonely Cyclops files celestial maintenance logs, noting that the Rainbow Bridge to Midgard still squeaks. A janitor god from an older pantheon pushes his broom through the stars. By the time the committee adjourns for lunch, ambrosia, obviously, though it tastes suspiciously like lukewarm yogurt, you're already nodding off in your corner. The droning voices, the endless motions, the scrolls rustling like soft rain, it's all lulling you into the kind of sleep that doesn't even need a lullaby. And as Zeus announces, for the 8th time that they'll circle back next epoch, you realize Olympus might not be glorious or even functional, but it sure is predictably peaceful. You're back among mortals now, or at least the stories they left behind, and wow, they sure made heroism look exciting. Slay the monster, win the glory, pose dramatically on a cliff. But tonight, you're going behind the curtain, into the Office of Heroic Affairs. Turns out every mythological quest had a pre-approval process. Hercules? Total paperwork nightmare. His 12 labors? More like 12 line items on a bureaucratic to-do list that had to be signed off by a 3-headed review panel and a Hydra-friendly environmental committee. The lion he wrestled? That lion had a habitat protection permit. It was a whole thing. You, of course, are shadowing an intern, a ghostly scribe who once misfiled a Minotaur hunting license and has never recovered emotionally. You trail her through the marble hallways of the ministry, your sandals clicking softly against floors polished by centuries of hero boot traffic. First stop, Task Authorization Department. This is where quests are assigned based on qualifications, hero GPA, and which gods are feeling petty that month. You pass a notice board labelled Pending Labours, with sticky wax seals and notations like Chimera Containment, Reassigned, Original Hero Swallowed, Golden Fleece Retrieval, Incompletely Documented, Sheep Not Verified Golden by Certified Appraiser. Underworld Visitation, Requires Chaperone. There's a faint smell of olive oil and regret. You peek into a cubicle where a tired clerk stamps a scroll for Perseus, who's requesting clearance to decapitate Medusa. The form is titled Special Monster Elimination Request, Form G. Under the Purpose of Slaying section, he's written, Saving Damsel Artistic Revenge. There's a scribbled note in the margin. Be sure to return the reflective shield, loaner, not a gift. Every heroic act is subject to scrutiny. Even Odysseus, that trickster of tricksters, had to file Form Delta 7 for excessive strategic deviation after inventing the Trojan horse. A minor god of carpentry was not amused. Historians still argue whether the entire horse idea was even approved in writing, your ghostly intern whispers. You pass a room labelled Post-Battle Debrief and Incident Reporting. Inside, an exhausted Hercules sits shirtless and sweaty, filling out injury reports while an owl god checks boxes on a scroll. Collateral damage? Destroyed an olive grove. Injuries? Several Hydra bites and one deeply bruised ego. Did you file that ego under psychological trauma or divine embarrassment? Both, he sighs. Across the hall, a nervous Theseus is trying to remember whether he left a breadcrumb trail or a string through the labyrinth. The clerk glares. Form B Lab requires precise navigational documentation. Theseus, not vibes. You shuffle deeper into the building where the myth verificatrix ensures that legends aren't too exaggerated. Bards tend to, shall we say, embellish. A bored-looking official waves a scroll at you. This says Jason tamed harpies using only eye contact. We've downgraded it to strong staring and mild negotiation. Next door is the Divine Sponsorship Bureau, where gods co-sign quests for publicity. Athena is a frequent visitor, scribbling notes on how to frame a hero's battle with more strategic angles. Ares just writes blood in red ink and leaves. Apollo, surprisingly, includes bullet points and metrics. Your intern stops to admire a wall lined with hero performance reviews. Each one is a blend of valor assessments, fear threshold ratings, and dramatic flair scores. One sheet reads, Name Achilles, Bravery, 9.5, Heal Vulnerability Awareness, 2.1. Comment, Needs improvement in risk forecasting, excellent hair. Even heroes who fail still get processed. Poor Icarus? There's an entire department called Flight Risk Management, where wing designs are audited for meltdown potential. You see a memo suggesting future mortals be warned via sun-related tattoos or maybe giant neon signs near cliffs. And oh, the Monster Ethics Committee. It's complicated. See, not all monsters are pure evil. Some were just misunderstood wildlife. The Sphinx, for example, tried to unionize riddle enforcement staff. Medusa? Filed at least 3 complaints before her snake hair situation became a security risk. You read her file, request for conflict mediation denied. No wonder she glared. You round a corner into the Heroic Claims and Compensation Office. Heroes submit receipts here for enchanted gear, broken sandals, and emotional tolls of slaying ancient beasts. There's a pile of forms marked unpaid labours. Most are from Hercules, who keeps writing, this should be retroactive hazard pay. One lone satyr is arguing that getting kicked by Pegasus counts as divine assault. A centaur at the counter points out that technically he stepped into a restricted landing zone. They settle it with an arm wrestle. This counts as arbitration. Over in records, a harried archivist is filing retired hero narratives, scrolls that record sanitized versions of adventures for public consumption. Some are hilariously off base. A footnote on one reads, this version omits 3 plagues and a goat incident for clarity. You lean against a pillar, letting it all wash over you. The forms, the folders, the flurry of parchment catching myth in midair. So many stories, all wrapped in procedure. It's not glamorous, but somehow it's comforting to know that the mighty were also micromanaged. You glance over and see a faded scroll labelled You. Apparently, everyone gets a file. The note so far? Existed, observant, needs snack. That checks out. You wander back toward the entrance, listening to the rhythmic stamping of approval sigils, the rustle of legendary paperwork, and the soft hoots of the auditing owl. Outside, the sky is a quiet shade of bronze. Another day, another story filed. And somewhere a new hero waits for their first quest assignment, still unaware that their destiny involves 6 forms, 3 notarizations, and a very, very long line. You drift deeper now, back into the shadows of forgotten myths, to a place where even time itself feels like it's been misplaced on the shelf. This is not a world of capes and crowns. It's the realm of knotted threads, soft-footed bureaucrats, and quiet genius. Welcome to the Incan Empire, where the sun is sacred, mountains speak softly, and records are kept in string. You walk into a stone chamber high in the Andes, its walls whispering with cool air and the faint scent of llama wool. Inside are bundles of Quipu, twisted, dyed cords that hang like sleepy chandeliers. No glowing screens, no feathered scrolls. Just knots. Thousands and thousands of deliberate, purposeful knots. You're greeted by a data specialist. Not that she calls herself that. She's a Quipu keeper, a Kipakamayuk, and she's been decoding the world one thread at a time. She offers you a seat near the warm stones and begins looping chords through her fingers, as if reading a bedtime story in Braille. This one, she says, brushing a deep red knot, is a census. That one, a record of potatoes. And this, she smiles, a festival. So much dancing. You settle in, listening to her explain how each colour means something. Crimson for war, ochre for gold, pale blue for tribute. The knots themselves form a kind of 3-dimensional syntax. Overhand, long knot, figure 8, each one whispering meaning in silence. It's like watching the world's most introverted spreadsheet. Historians still argue whether these chords could also encode spoken language, or if they were purely numerical. Some believe a lost oral key once accompanied the Quipu, whispered alongside its chords by those trained to remember. Others claim it held emotional data. If that makes your eyes droop, congratulations. You're finally speaking bureaucrat. The room around you is quiet, reverent. You're inside an ancient library with no books, no words, just the meticulous hum of counting things that matter. Cows, corn, conquests, marriages, deaths. The sound of knot against knot becomes hypnotic. It's the ancient version of clicking save over and over, except the file is woven into the Empire's veins. And this wasn't fringe, this was central governance. Across the Andes, runners called chasquis sprinted with these cords tucked into woven satchels, delivering data across a highway system so advanced it startled the Spaniards. These runners didn't just pass on messages, they passed on meaning, knotted and looped into silence. Some could recite entire crop inventories while chewing coca leaves and outrunning llamas. Your guide points out a faded yellow strand. That one's tax data, she says. You owe 2 llamas and a dance. She doesn't elaborate. And yes, there were audits. Imperial inspectors, let's call them the Quipu police, made surprise visits to remote villages to cross-check the knot records. Found discrepancies? Back to retraining. Which, let's be honest, probably involved being politely glared at by a grandmother until you got your counting straight. The beauty of the system was that it scaled. From mountaintop shrines to jungle outposts, the Quipu adapted. It recorded crop yields, labor quotas, moon cycles, family trees. There's even evidence that knots were tied differently depending on whether the user was of royal blood or just your average corn tax-paying commoner. One dusty cord is especially elaborate. That, your guide says reverently, is from Pachacuti's reign. It records a lunar eclipse and a very large party. We think they might have danced for 3 days, or lost count. Some of the best preserved Quipu were hidden, buried under rock, woven into graves. Why? Possibly because after the Empire fell, Spanish officials destroyed what they didn't understand. That's the tragedy. An entire civilization's Excel sheets unraveled by conquest and fire. Today, archaeologists huddle over these cords with infrared scanners and infinite patience, trying to read stories written without ink. Still, some cords remain untranslated, humming softly like background static. Maybe they're receipts. Maybe they're love notes. Maybe one of them is just a reminder that someone forgot their lunch on a llama. You'll never know. And that mystery wraps around you like a woolen shawl. Your guide tugs gently on one Quipu. This one, she says, talks about the rain. It rained too much that year. And just like that, you feel the past stir. Not with battles or heroics, but with soggy feet and flooded quinoa, the very human details that make up a life. The Empire might be gone, but someone's bad harvest is still remembered, encoded in knots like little sighs across time. You begin to think that maybe true power isn't in the thunder or the sword. It's in the quiet systems that remember. The ones that count the beans and tally the steps and mourn the lost llamas without ceremony. And speaking of llamas, you spot one outside the window. It stares at you. It knows things. Your guide places one of the Quipu cords in your hands, and though you don't understand it, you feel it. You feel the calm in its complexity, the trust in its tangle, the strange peace of knowing that someone, somewhere, once took the time to tie it just right. You leave the chamber feeling quieter than before. Like a knot yourself, unraveled, then rewoven into something simpler, something softer. And in the fading light, the cords sway gently on their pegs, whispering data to the dusk. You linger in the twilight of empire now, caught between thread and myth, between what was once recorded and what quietly slipped through the cracks. And in this hush, you wander toward the final threadbare corridor of tonight's journey, the forgotten room where history gets filed, literally. This is where the dust settles. You find yourself inside what could only be described as the Record's afterlife, a stone archive with no name, no windows, and no coffee breaks. The floor is paved with flattened scrolls, and from the ceiling hang bundles of half-decoded myths, tax notes, and what appears to be an inter-office memo from 1354 BCE that simply reads, "Fix the chariot brakes." Your footsteps echo softly as you move through rows of history's leftovers, the stories that were too weird, too small, or too delightfully boring to make it into legend. And yet here they sit, fully documented. Not quite heroic, not quite mundane. Just officially existing. You brush past a shelf labelled Celestial Observations, misidentified. It's full of records where priests thought a comet was a divine owl, or someone mistook a solar eclipse for their uncle's ghost. There's an entire box titled Stars That Definitely Weren't Gods, probably. You peek inside and sneeze on centuries of footnotes. Nearby is the Lost Heroes shelf, a sombre, slightly crooked unit where the deeds of minor demigods are kept. There's Aristos, the reasonably tall, who once saved a town from an aggressive goose, and Thymelia of midday naps, whose prophecy was never fulfilled because she forgot it halfway through. One parchment says simply, Hero, anon. Quest, found misplaced sandal. Reward, satisfaction. You nod. That's the kind of story that gets you through a Tuesday. Historians still argue whether this back chamber of documentation was purely practical or a kind of sacred filing ritual. Some say it was a spiritual form of closure. Others claim it was just what happens when you hire a Virgo to run your empire. Next, you find a complaint scroll from the underworld, filled with grumpy commentary from shades and spirits. No one remembers my name. I invented lentils. The living keep mispronouncing our river. Too many bards, not enough silence. You gently roll it back up and place it beside the ghost registry, where names are listed with cause of death, spectral disposition and haunting preferences. One spirit has simply written, "Do not disturb before 10 a.m. You notice a bored-looking minor deity flipping through a celestial filing cabinet. "Looking for your destiny form?" he asks without looking up. You nod, unsure. He hands you a scroll labelled Lifelong Patterns, mundane but deeply resilient. It feels accurate. Farther in, you stumble across a row of corded Quipu hanging beside wax-sealed papyrus and Babylonian clay tablets. It's a little historical potluck. A hanging sign reads, Multi-Empire Data Sync in Progress. Beneath it, a small tag explains, we are still trying to align Mayan and Egyptian lunar calendars. Please be patient. And that's the thing. None of this feels glorious, but it's all quietly wondrous. You realize that every civilization had its own way of trying to remember. Knots, clay, myths, sandals. Even the smallest moments were captured, not because they were grand, but because someone believed they were worth keeping. The longer you linger, the more you admire the ancient obsession with documentation. The Sumerians once filed a recipe for beer. The Romans kept schedules for bathhouse cleaning. The Aztecs logged daily weather by symbol, including slightly moody sun. It's all in here. You chuckle softly as you pass a shelf titled Unfulfilled Prophecies and Their Deniers. One scroll reads, Predicted Return of the Three-Mouthed Serpent. Status, still no serpent. Notes, might have been a metaphor for sibling rivalry. Across from that, the Myth Adjustment Desk. Here exhausted scribes work overtime to update old stories so they make more narrative sense to modern audiences. One is editing out a subplot where Zeus turns into a raccoon. Another is reducing a 400-year dream sequence to 3 polite paragraphs. And, because nothing escapes the filing instinct, there's even a cabinet for minor historical odours. You open one drawer and recoil gently. Must be the chamber for Stables of Ganymede pre-drainage. You close it, firmly. You pause for a moment, letting all the details settle into your mind like dust. It's peaceful here, soothing, the quiet hum of forgotten details. The slow pulse of history as paperwork. You imagine the final clerk on duty, an old woman with ink-stained fingers and eyes like candle flames, recording your visit with a single brushstroke. One wandered through. They listened. That's all you've ever needed to do. And as you turn to leave this place of knots and scrolls and long-forgotten forms, the walls seem to lean in a little warm with gratitude. They don't need fanfare, just someone to witness that it all happened. You exhale, heavier than when you came in, but quieter somehow. The stories may be soft, but they hold. And now your steps fall lighter, your breathing slower, your mind gently wrapping itself around the last loose ends. And as the quiet settles deeper, the weight of time eases. The room, now dim and still, hums with the gentle pulse of everything that's been recorded and remembered. You close your eyes, feeling the soft embrace of all those long-forgotten stories, those whispers of empires and gods, wrap around you like a blanket. They are no longer distant echoes. They are part of you now. You are woven into the fabric of all that came before. With each breath, you sink further into this peaceful, timeless space. There is no rush, no need to go anywhere. The dust that once swirled in the air now seems to settle into your very soul, quieting all the noise and leaving only the sound of slow, steady existence. A world of forgotten myth and recorded memory, where everything is seen, even if it never shouted to be noticed. You drift into the embrace of soft dreams, where stories continue to unfold, not for any audience, but simply because they exist, and that is enough. Good night.